Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through stacks of sources to bring you the core insights, the real nuggets of knowledge.
That's the plan.
Today, we're getting into the world of a philosopher, a really famous one, known for shaking the very foundations of how we think we know things.
David Hume.
Exactly. But here's the twist, and I love this part, this major intellect. One of the first writers to actually make a decent living from it was just as famous for his cooking.
Right. His friends apparently called him the fattest hog of Epicurus. Fictionally, we assume.
We hope. So, this deep dive is for you, especially if you're keen to see how a philosopher's life and their big ideas connect. We're looking at David Hume. Beyond the brainpower, we'll find a lot of contradictions, a good sense of humor, and some really surprising takes on human nature.
Yeah, we'll touch on his quirks, his pretty radical skepticism, his ideas about morality, society.
And maybe most compellingly, how he faced death.
And we're drawing on quite a bit here, biographies, his own letters, key bits from his philosophical works, trying to get a rounded picture.
Okay, so our mission today. Let's try to understand Hume not just as some figure stuck in a history book,
Right.
but maybe as a guide, someone whose insights, maybe even his flaws and his experiences, give us a different way to look at being human, how we reason, how we live a life worth examining.
And what does that mean for us right now?
What does it mean for us? Let's find out.
Okay.
Let's start with this image. David Hume, the Northern Epicurean. It kind of captures both his philosophy, leaning towards earthly enjoyment, and his Scottishness.
Definitely. When he got back to Scotland in 1769, after being in Paris, he was, well, famous and finally pretty well off.
And apparently quite eager to use his kitchen. He joked his place was too small for his great talent for cookery. He called it a science he planned to focus on.
And he wasn't really joking. The records show he had a serious case of Golandism, basically. A deep, hearty enjoyment of food and drink. Almost indulgent.
He wrote to friends bragging about his recipes, right? Soup Laren?
Yeah, it was soup Laren. And he claimed his beef and cabbage, old mutton, and old claret were second to none.
And the sheep head broth. An ambassador apparently talked about it for days.
For 8 days, the story goes. And Boswell called his style Northern Epicurist. It stuck.
He even taught his housekeeper, Peggy Irvin, some fancy cooking techniques, though he apparently wasn't afraid to get his own hands dirty sometimes.
No, seems like he enjoyed the process. There was even a popular cookbook nearby, Cleland's A New and Easy Method of Cookery, that gives you a sense of the rich food he liked.
And his friends noticed his hospitality, too. Getting guests tipsy, one colonel mentioned. And Lord Kelly's joke about the Edinburgh eaterati instead of literati. That's brilliant.
It is. But, it's interesting because a lot of people back then were genuinely surprised by this.
Why? Just because he was a philosopher?
Pretty much. Western thought, Plato, Christianity,
Mm.
often looked down on the flesh, the body, physical pleasures. Hume was pushing back.
So good food and good philosophy weren't opposites for him?
Not at all. He actually wrote something like, "An elegant table hasn't spoiled my relish for sobriety, nor gaiety for study." He found a balance.
And this love of food, it wasn't just incidental, was it? It connected to his deeper ideas.
Absolutely. Enjoying food without apology kind of mirrored his really quite radical view for the time, pre-Darwin. Remember that humans aren't fundamentally different from animals.
He actually said that.
Oh, yeah. He wrote, "No truth appears to me more evident than that beasts are endowed with thought and reason as well as men," which was a huge statement then.
Wow. And he extended that to morality, too.
He did. Since morality for him came from sympathy, he suggested animals have a kind of primitive moral sense. He used examples like the pride or humility you see in a swan or, your dog.
Anyone who's had a pet can probably relate to that on some level.
Right. It makes you think.
It really does. It challenges our assumptions about intelligence, about what's important in life, maybe even where pleasure fits in. So how did this rather unique individual start his intellectual life? It was early, wasn't it?
Very early. University of Edinburgh at just 12 in 1723.
12. Was that normal?
Surprisingly common back then, yeah. But he wasn't impressed. Wrote something like, "You can find anything a professor says in a book anyway."
Huh. So he didn't stick around for the degree.
Nope. Left for that one. His real learning, seems like, came from places like the Rankinian Club.
Which was what?
Basically, a club where smart people got together, ate, drank, and talked. His kind of scene, clearly.
Food, drink, and debate. Fits the pattern.
Exactly. And it was likely during these years he drifted from religion. He wasn't convinced by monkish virtues, he called them, like celibacy, fasting. He just didn't see them as useful nor agreeable.
So what was virtue for Hume?
Much more practical. Things that helped a person get on in life, made them a good member of society, or simply increased their own self-enjoyment.
That's a very down-to-earth view of virtue. But his path wasn't smooth. You mentioned he really educated himself after university.
Right. He gave law a try, hated it, called it nauseous. Then he threw himself into philosophy. Really intense study for about 6 months.
And that led to problems.
Big problems. A deep depression. He actually called it the disease of the learned. Said his enthusiasm just vanished. All my ardor seemed in a moment to be extinguished.
That sounds rough. How did he get out of it?
His cure became fundamental to his whole outlook. Balance. He figured out he needed to study less intensely, exercise every single day, make time to relax, hang out with people.
Simple advice, but profound.
He even told his nephew later, every day, fair or foul, you ought to use some exercise. That experience really drove home his belief that philosophy has to be grounded in, how humans actually are.
Did he ever try other philosophical approaches, like Stoicism, that often emphasizes mental fortitude?
He did when he was younger. Tried to brace himself against, death, poverty, shame, pain, the whole Stoic package.
But he didn't stick with it.
No, he ultimately rejected its core idea, indifference to life. Hume loved life, all of it. The thinking, the eating, the socializing.
So accepting death wasn't the same as being indifferent to life?
Not for Hume. He said, accepting death is not the same as welcoming it. Loving life does not mean clinging to it. It's a subtle and important difference.
And interestingly, he didn't just credit philosophy for his ability to face death calmly later on.
Right. He put it down just as much to good fortune, having a naturally mild disposition, not having faced great calamities. It's kind of humble realism, acknowledging luck's role.
That feels very relevant today, doesn't it? This idea of balance, managing mental well-being, especially with information overload. His approach feels quite modern.
It really does. It offers something maybe more practical than just pure stoicism for many people.
Okay, let's shift gears to Hume the skeptic. This is probably what he's most famous for.
Definitely a huge part of his legacy.
He goes to France in 1734, he's only 23, to write his big work, the Treatise of Human Nature. And he chooses La Flèche, a Jesuit college. Why there?
Mostly because it was cheap and they had a fantastic library. But it's ironic, right? As skeptic immersing himself in a Jesuit environment.
And something crucial happened there, related to miracles.
Yes. The story goes he was walking in the college cloisters, maybe even debating a Jesuit priest about some miracle story the priest was pushing.
And he had an epiphany.
Pretty much. He came up with his famous argument against miracles. The core idea is simple but devastating. A weaker evidence can never destroy a stronger.
Meaning?
Well, a miracle, by definition, violates the laws of nature. Our experience of nature being uniform is incredibly strong evidence. Any testimony for a miracle is, by comparison, much weaker evidence.
So the consistent laws of nature always outweigh someone claiming they saw a one-off violation.
That was his point. Plus, he thought we humans just love surprise and wonder, which makes us, frankly, too easily fooled by miracle stories.
This directly challenged a lot of religious belief at the time.
Hugely. And it wasn't just miracles. He took aim at the whole rationalist project, especially Descartes.
Descartes, who tried to build knowledge on pure reason alone, doubting everything first.
Right. That antecedent skepticism, Hume called it. He thought it was basically impossible to actually live that way. You can't doubt everything.
So what was Hume's alternative?
Empiricism. He argued that the science of man understanding ourselves must be based on experience and observation. He wanted to bring the scientific method, essentially, into philosophy.
And this led to Hume's fork.
Exactly. A crucial distinction. On one side, you have relations of ideas. Think math, logic, things that are true by definition. 2 + 2 = 4. Certainty is possible there.
Okay.
On the other side, you have matters of fact. Things like the sun will rise tomorrow. This depends entirely on past experience, on observation. There's no logical guarantee it will happen again. It's probable, but not certain.
So facts about the world aren't logically certain, only known through experience.
Precisely. And Hume famously said, if a book contains neither logical reasoning about relations of ideas nor experimental reasoning about matters of fact,
commit it then to the flames.
That's the one. A pretty dramatic statement about what he considered meaningful inquiry.
He also pointed out the is-ought gap, right? How we jump from describing how things are to saying how they ought to be.
Yes, another major contribution. He noticed philosophers constantly doing this, slipping from is statements to ought statements without explaining how they made that leap.
What's the implication?
It suggests that just because something is natural or is the case doesn't automatically mean it's good or that we ought to do it. You need a separate argument for the ought.
Okay, but if reason can't give us certainty about the world and we're prone to faulty reasoning, doesn't that lead to, like, total skepticism? How do we function?
Well, Hume recognized that.
Mm-hmm.
He thought reason, if you follow it ruthlessly, would destroy all belief and lead to paralysis.
So what saves us? More philosophy.
Nope. According to Hume, it's nature herself. Just everyday life. Getting distracted, having dinner, playing backgammon, chatting with friends. That's the cure for philosophical melancholy and delirium, as he put it.
So basically, don't overthink it to the point of absurdity.
Kind of. He said after being out in the world, his deep philosophical speculation seemed so cold and strained and ridiculous he couldn't even bother with them anymore.
So the takeaway isn't total doubt, but something else.
A mitigated skepticism. Use reason as a guide. Be aware of its limits, but don't pretend to doubt in philosophy what we do not doubt in our hearts. Live in the world.
That feels like important advice, especially now. We rely so much on facts and logic, but Hume reminds us our passions, our daily lives, they play a huge role in how we actually navigate things.
A very important reminder.
Let's look closer now at Hume's ideas about human nature itself. What did he think about the self? Who are we?
This is another radical bit. He argued there's no permanent, unchanging self or soul. Instead, the self is nothing but a bundle or collection of different perceptions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement.
Just a bundle, like a stream of consciousness constantly changing.
Pretty much. No underlying substance holding it all together. Just the flow.
That sounds unsettling, but also familiar. Doesn't it echo some Eastern philosophies?
It really does. It's remarkably similar to the Buddhist concept of anatta, or not self. The idea that the self is made of aggregates and a fixed self is an illusion.
Did he know about Buddhism?
There's speculation, maybe through Jesuit missionaries he encountered in La Flèche. We don't know for sure, but the parallel is striking.
And what about morality? If there's no soul and reason is limited, where do right and wrong come from?
For Hume, it comes from human nature itself, specifically from sentiment or feeling, particularly the feeling of sympathy.
Sympathy, like empathy.
Very close. Our ability to share or understand the feelings of others. Actions are good or virtuous if they are agreeable or useful, either to ourselves or to other people, because that tends to provoke pleasant feelings of approval through sympathy.
So it's based on feelings and consequences, not divine rules or pure logic.
Exactly. And this led him to argue for something we might call moral pluralism, that there isn't just one single way to live a good life. Many different things can contribute to it, and different people or societies might value different things, like, say, quiet domestic life versus exciting social life. You can't always have it all.
So there are trade-offs, and different choices can be equally valid.
That's the idea. It's a more flexible approach than many moral systems.
What about justice? Was that also based on feeling?
Not entirely. He saw justice as more of an invention. A set of rules we create because they're useful for maintaining a peaceful, functioning society, especially when resources are scarce.
So it's artificial but necessary.
Kinda, yeah. He even imagined scenarios where it wouldn't be needed, like if everyone was perfectly benevolent or if there was absolute abundance of everything. But in the real world, we need rules of justice.
Did he think equality was part of justice?
He thought equality was a fine ideal, but he was actually quite wary of trying to enforce perfect equality.
Why where?
He worried it would require constant interference, rigorous inquisition, he called it, and could easily slide into tyranny.
Interesting. He seemed to favor moderation.
Very much so. He praised the middle station of life, quoted the biblical prayer, "Give me neither poverty nor riches." He felt extremes, either luxury or desperation, distorted judgment, and drowned out the calm voice of reason.
Okay, one more big one here. Free will. Did he think we have it?
His view was, again, radical for its time, but very influential now. It's called compatibilism.
Compatibilism, meaning free will is compatible with what?
With determinism. The idea that all events, including human actions, are caused by prior events.
So he didn't believe in free will in the sense of being able to choose completely independently of causes.
Correct. He thought human actions are as much determined by prior causes as anything else. We have liberty of spontaneity. We can act according to our will without being forced, but not liberty of indifference, meaning we can't act completely free from the chain of cause and effect that shapes our desires and motives.
But wait, if our actions are determined, how can we be held responsible? Morally responsible?
See, Hume flips this around. He argues that it's because our actions are determined by our character and motives that we can be held responsible.
How does that work?
If actions were totally random, unconnected to our personality or desires, then praising or blaming someone wouldn't make sense. We hold people responsible because we assume their actions flow from who they are. Their motives have a regular and uniform influence. If someone acts bizarrely out of character, we tend to question their sanity, not celebrate their freedom.
So predictability, in a sense, is the basis for responsibility.
From Hume's view, yes. It's a really counterintuitive but powerful argument.
Wow, okay. That bundle theory of self, morality from sentiment, justice as invention, free will being compatible with determinism. How do these ideas challenge your sense of self, your ideas about right and wrong? There's so much to unpack there.
Absolutely. Hume really forces you to examine fundamental assumptions.
Now let's talk about Hume the person, because he sounds like quite a character full of contradictions.
He definitely wasn't a stuffy, detached philosopher stereotype.
His appearance, for instance, people mocked it. Diderot called him a fat, well-fed Bernardine monk.
Yeah, descriptions often mention him being quite large, ungainly. Very different from the rather handsome statue of him in Edinburgh today.
And his accent. He apparently spoke with a really broad Scots accent, even though he worked hard to remove Scotticisms from his writing.
Right, that contrast is interesting. Trying to fit into the London literary scene in writing, but sounding very Scottish when he spoke.
But he wasn't just awkward, he had a fun side.
Oh yeah. Apparently loved banter, jokes, even practical jokes. And there are stories showing a real warmth, a tenderness.
Like the one about the dog.
Exactly. At a party, a lady's dog makes a bad smell, everyone's embarrassed, and Hume apparently says, "Oh, it's not Bod the dog, it is me." Just to smooth things over. Shows a certain kindness and social grace, despite the awkward exterior.
That's quite endearing. But we also have to address the less comfortable aspects, his flaws.
Yes, and this is crucial. Hume was a product of his time and held views we rightly find reprehensible today. His racism is the most glaring example.
He wrote that comment about suspecting black people were naturally inferior.
He did, in a footnote. It's undeniable and deeply problematic. Although, it's also true he condemns slavery itself as cruel and oppressive. It's a complex and uncomfortable picture.
It shows that even brilliant minds can have major prejudices, weaknesses, and blind spots, as you said.
Precisely. And his politics were generally quite conservative, too. He wasn't a fan of the masses, the rascally mob, he called them, skeptical about democracy expanding.
He even removed a defense of press freedom from an essay.
He did, after some riots, the Wilkes riots. His support for American independence later on seems to have been more pragmatic, like it's just not worth the cost of trying to keep the colonies, rather than based on some deep belief in their cause.
Then there's the whole drama with Rousseau. That was quite a public spat.
Oh, huge. Hume initially really admired Rousseau's genius, even though he thought he was a bit, well, out there, his extravagance. Yeah. Hume helped bring him to England, trying to protect him.
But Rousseau turned on him.
Massively. Rousseau was intensely paranoid and became convinced Hume was leading some conspiracy against him, accused him publicly. It got very bitter.
What did Hume do?
He was furious, called Rousseau a blackest and most atrocious villain. But interestingly, even in his anger, he also expressed pity for Rousseau, acknowledging his madness and imbecility.
So even in a feud, there's a layer of that Humean sympathy, perhaps, or at least understanding.
You could see it that way. It wasn't just pure animosity.
These episodes, the flaws, the feuds, what do they tell us? Maybe about how hard it is to live up to philosophical ideals, like sympathy, in real life, even for the guy who championed it.
I think that's a fair takeaway. It grounds the philosophy in messy human reality.
Okay, finally, let's turn to how Hume faced his own end. He knew he was dying, right? Colon cancer or something similar.
Yes, likely colon cancer or chronic ulcerative colitis. He knew it was terminal.
And how did he handle it?
With remarkable cheerfulness and activity, by all accounts. He kept reading, kept writing letters, praised Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, Edward Gibbon's History.
He didn't withdraw.
Not at all. He even joked that if he could choose any period of his life to live over again, it might be his final illness because his spirits were so good.
That's extraordinary. And he had that famous conversation with Boswell.
Right. Boswell, Everett the journalist, basically went to see how an infidel An atheist, in Boswell's mind, would face death. He was hoping for some last-minute fear or repentance.
And he didn't get it.
Not even close. Hume calmly told him he saw no reason to believe in an afterlife, stated quite bluntly that the morality of every religion was bad, and that when he heard someone was very religious, he generally concluded he was a rascal.
Wow. That must have shocked Boswell.
It did, deeply. But Hume delivered these bombshells with apparently complete calm and good humor.
And Adam Smith's account, with the joke about Charon.
Yeah, Smith wrote a beautiful letter describing Hume's final days. Hume imagined arguing with Charon, the mythical ferryman of the dead, saying he needed more time.
Why?
To see his books become more successful, and amusingly, to see the downfall of some of the prevailing systems of superstition, still taking jabs at organized religion right to the end.
Even his will had jokes.
A little bit. A codicil leaving specific amounts of wine, claret, and port to his cousin John Home, apparently to settle the only two differences that ever arose between us concerning temporal matters, a final lighthearted settling of accounts.
So, was he an atheist? He seemed to avoid the label.
He did. Partly for practical reasons, atheism was illegal and dangerous, but also on principle. His skepticism extended to absolute certainty about God's non-existence, too. Agnosticism is probably a better fit.
So he opposed dogmatic religion, superstition, and enthusiasm, but not necessarily any idea of a higher power.
Something like that. And crucially, he remained good friends with many liberal-minded clergy members. Even while disagreeing strongly with their theology, he could separate the ideas from the people.
Thinking about Hume's death, his calmness, his lack of fear, his humor, how does that challenge our own views about faith, about facing mortality, about living and dying with, I suppose, integrity?
It's profound, isn't it? He offers a powerful example of facing the end without traditional religious consolations, relying instead on his temperament, his friendships, and his philosophical outlook, and remarkably finding cheerfulness there.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've seen David Hume, the unexpected foodie.
The Northern Epicurean.
Right, the practical philosopher who learned balance from depression, grounding his ideas in real human nature.
The radical skeptic, challenging miracles, pushing empiricism, showing reason's limits, but advocating a workable, mitigated skepticism.
The social thinker who gave us the bundle theory of self-morality based on sympathy, and that tricky idea of compatibilist free will.
And the complex man, flawed, funny, capable of feuds, but ultimately facing his own death with astonishing grace and good humor.
It's quite a picture.
And, Hume once wrote something quite striking. He said, human life is more governed by fortune than by reason, and maybe it is to be regarded more as a pastime than as a serious occupation.
A pastime.
Yeah. He then asked, shall we engage ourselves in it with passion and anxiety? It is not worthy of so much concern.
Wow. Okay, so here's a final thought for you listening. What if Hume's right, even partly? What if life is more of a pastime than a desperately serious occupation? How might that perspective shift how you approach your own passions, your worries, your search for meaning?
Something to definitely chew on.
This has just been a scratch on the surface of David Hume, really. We hope it sparked your interest to dive deeper into his writings yourself. There's so much more to discover.
Indeed there is.